So I was asked to give a talk, and I thought I'd like to just share a few things that I find really useful, speak from my own experience, talk about a few things that I've picked up along the way, in terms of stuff that is incredibly helpful in terms of being with and acting on all the things that I get concerned about in terms of political and environmental turmoil, turbulence. So firstly, I wanted to just clarify a few things in terms of the terms evolve and die. So evolve, I'm coming at that not from the Darwinian context, because I'm no scientist, that's not my training. So it's actually like the second definition that you get in the dictionary, not the first one, which is a gradual process of change and development. So yeah, when I'm talking about evolve, that's what I'm referring to here. And my use of the word die, okay, slightly shock tactics, but it's not the factual thing. It's not the factual thing that we're going to die, because that's pretty much taken care of, right? We don't have to do anything about that. It will happen. It's like the only thing you can be sure of in the sea of uncertainty, so that's fine. We don't have to do any work on that, you know, unless we struggle with the idea, and then there's the death space over there that'll help you with that. So my use of the word die, it very much refers to what we talk about in Buddhism as spiritual death, which is basically dying to our old ways, leaving behind things that are no longer any use to us. So spiritual death, and sometimes that's just basically explained in one simple word, very, very common in Buddhism, change. So we're in the sixth mass extinction that our planet has undergone. And from where I'm sitting, our political leaders and the big corporate bosses are not paying it sufficient attention. And I know my Facebook feed shows a bit of a bias towards sensational and upsetting headlines. I am also finding the whole Trump, Brexit, global heating, Windrush situation, it sort of seems to fit, it feels like it's sort of legitimizing corruption, hatred, ignorance, divisiveness in ways I've not known as extreme as this in my lifetime. And I feel only really at the beginning of learning how to respond to things like this not being the way I want them to be. But I would like to share some of what I find helpful anyway. So, tools to evolve and tools to die. So as we grow and change, we need to leave behind things that no longer serve us in order to face oppression and political inaction, and have the strength and the resources to fight and oppose things that we aren't happy with, that oppose a common sense of shared humanity. And so we need to resource ourselves. So that's something I'm quite concerned in, this idea of, regenerative action, being able to stay resourced and avoiding burnout. Activist burnout is quite a common thing. So, let's have a look. First of all, we've got so yeah, here we go. So firstly, just a little, I'm quite visual. Evolve and die. So actually, it's actually the same thing. It's actually a whole circle of things, two sides of the same coin. We tend to be quite dualistic as humans. It's either this or this. And actually, Buddhism is about going, actually the this or the this are actually both the same and the same. So I wanted to kind of draw that out to say that this is not about two separate things. It's the same thing, expressed differently. And that might become clear as I talk. So I really like circles. And I'm going to, you just have to bear with me, we've got a whole load of technical things that I want to deal with. In terms of the tools that I'm going to talk about, we're going to talk about basically how to resource ourselves and that idea of like, you know, when you're facing a challenge, I often feel like you have to sort of gird your loins. And I was like, what does that mean? So I looked it up, and loins obviously is this kind of area here. Gird means to tighten. So it's like to tighten up your pants. So I thought it was like a bit to like put your superhero pants on. So to get our superhero pants on, sort of, we've got this, and I'm very associative, incredibly associative. So you might have heard me testing the music out earlier. But whenever I look at this, this idea of this sort of circularity in our practice of taking on practices to help us evolve and then die and then letting go, I always get this song, so I just wanted to share it with you. Yeah, so that's that. There's another one actually that I could play right now as well. Can we just do two back to back, because I do love this. So the idea that actually this is a joint project, it's collective. I might play this again later. But everything that we do, sometimes in Buddhism you get the focus that it's us and we're just working on our own and it's all down to us. And it's absolutely not true. I'll talk a bit about that later, but I'll play this one now because I love it. Absolutely love this one. I've got kids. Let's see. Oh, it might not load. No, might have to come back to that one later. Okay, save that one. Right, let's get some focus going on. First up, I'm going to be talking about meditation. And I'm going to open this one up and put that there and sit down. So, this is my tool bag. When I'm not doing Buddhafield, I'm a furniture maker and joinery tutor. And this is actually my tool bag. I emptied it out. So I have a little habit of talking about practice in terms of toolkits, because it's a metaphor that really works for me. So I'm going to just play with that a little bit more. So the first thing I'm going to talk about in terms of tools, this is the first tool I'm going to talk about. It's the tool of meditation. And I think particularly if you're involved with any kind of activism or sort of trying to get things done or making change, it can feel very, very difficult to think about putting time into sitting still and not doing anything. And I don't think meditation is not doing anything in the slightest, but it can seem like that. It can seem like a very passive thing to people. So don't do something, just sit there. It can kind of feel a little bit counterintuitive to the like, don't just sit there, do something, and those pulls between us. When I talk about meditation, I'm talking about setting up a practice and sticking with it and really feeling the benefits from it. And also looking at getting help and support when you need it. The two main foundational practices for me, because I've only ever learnt meditation within Triratna, have been the mindfulness of breathing and the metta bhavana practice. So those are, if they're not familiar to you, the mindfulness of breathing practice, it's a mindfulness practice, quite self-explanatory, and it works on, focusing on the breath in different ways, and that helps cultivate a sense of mindfulness. And the metta bhavana, that means cultivation of loving kindness, development of loving kindness, and that's a practice where we take into account different people that might feature in our lives and work on creating a sense of positive kindness, sense of well-wishing equally to all of them. And in a way, these practices have been absolutely key and foundational to me. And when I say foundational, I don't mean something that I would do and then sort of move on from and leave behind, as in that's the basic practice and then I'm going to go on to something higher. It's not really like that. My teacher, Sangharakshita, the founder of the Triratna Buddhist order, he always said, there's no higher teachings, just deeper understandings. And I think that's really true. So those practices can benefit you throughout your entire life in different ways. However, I have found over the last 4 or 5 years things have got a little bit different for me. And I don't do those practices as taught anymore, but they are still manifesting in different ways in the way that I meditate. And it's felt a little bit like, so my daughter's just done her grade 2 exam and my son's about to start learning, and they've been, my daughter's just been banging out the scales and the arpeggios and the broken chords, and that's what she needs to do right now to really get into a particular way of learning music and music theory and so on. But there's going to come a time where she's not going to need to give it such rigidity, maybe, as she gets older, and maybe as the musician in her really flourishes. that learning and understanding will manifest itself in different ways. And it sort of seems like at the moment in my meditation practice, that seems to be what's happening. So I've gone a little bit off-piste in terms of the, particular way of doing meditation. It just seems to be manifesting in different ways. Yeah, so I meditate every day and it just looks different. Awareness meditations could be, mindfulness of breathing, walking meditation, and so on. Anything that's really supporting a sense of being here, right now. Having a real sense of presence in your body, in your environment. Incredibly beneficial because right now is the only place where things are happening. So it's good to be here. Being able to be as present as possible is an incredible resource. So the cultivation of loving kindness meditation works on showing you that we're all the same, that we are indeed all in this together. I wonder if I could try and see if I can get it to play now. It's a bit of a thing, isn't it, trying to rely on tech to do stuff in a field. No, it's still not going to do it. Oh well. I think you all know the song now because you heard it in the sound check. Yep. So it helps us connect more with feelings of kindness and well-wishing for yourself and all beings equally. And I think it's an incredibly radical practice. Working on breaking down divisions, whether mind-made or socio-cultural between yourselves and others, actively works to dismantle power structures that aim to keep us under control in one way or another. So post-Brexit, hate crime in the UK rose by 17%. And 3/4 of those were race-related, 3/4 of those crimes reported. The more work we can do on breaking down any divisions that stand between us and others, the better. Taking on a meditation practice like the Metta Bhavana can help us to develop empathy, which is crucial to understanding why people act in ways we don't want them to. There's a great poem that I'm going to read at the end by Akapa. He's another member of the Triratna Buddhist order. And it's called the Shambala Warrior Mind Training Verses, and it's a big favourite of mine. Here's a few lines from it that illustrate a little bit what I mean. He says, "Sit with hatred until you feel the fear beneath it. Sit with fear until you feel the compassion beneath that." So if I can understand what's going on for people who are doing things I don't like, then I can stay in connection with them. I can want the best for them too. And again, Akapa writes, "When you see weapons of hate, dispel them with love." And I don't think that sort of love is necessarily also about being a doormat and just saying, yeah, it's fine, that's fine. Love can also give a very strong no when it needs to. And I'm a parent, so I've got a bit of an experience in that. So we've got these two tools, awareness, mindfulness meditation, and loving kindness meditation. So I'm just going to call that meditation, and then we can put that in our toolkit, ready for us when we need it. I'm going to write it up here as well. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is interconnectedness, and the actual tool itself would be better described as understanding interconnectedness. I'm going to write that down here. So the two types of meditation practice that I talked about just now can give rise to an understanding. A sort of seeing into the nature of the truth of interconnectedness. It's something that's always there. We have to see it. We have to be aware of it. So that, for example, we see that actually we're not that different, for example, than the person we put in the fourth stage of our Metta Bhavana. That's the fourth stage is where we put somebody in that meditation who we have a difficulty with, or we may actually actively dislike. and we cultivate well-wishing towards them. And then when we notice the breath in our bodies and watch our breathing, we look around and we see that actually everyone else right here is breathing too, with their bodies. We're all breathing, we're all alive, breathing. And often with activism, we can polarize, sort of us against them. And we can hate on them because they're making our lives difficult. And that's really understandable. It sort of feels like it gives us fuel to sort of fire us up and fire us on and keep on working on the thing that we care about. However, although harder to do, staying in connection with our shared humanity in situations of frontline activism, say, can really help diffuse conflict and progress dialogue. So with the truth of interconnectedness or understanding interconnectedness, it can be easy to see, say, in the case of climate emergency, we can see, yeah, there's a causal link, isn't there, between CO2 and, global heating. We can see that. However, the universality of the truth of interconnectedness is there to see in any situation, right now, played out at large in every single moment. And being able to see that is very crucial. Sometimes we need to put work in on the cushion, doing those meditation practices, in order to be able to cultivate more of an understanding of that. So I'm going to put understanding interconnectedness in there too, because that feels like a very important thing to have in order to resource ourselves. So, next up. Ethics. So meditation supports us to see the universal truth of interconnectedness, and then what we see is that what we do has an effect. So we're then motivated and inspired to consider our actions in the world. So we're inspired towards having some kind of ethical framework in our lives, something that we can commit to because we'll see that there will be a benefit to all life. This could be something aspirational, something that we're working towards, like people try that veganuary thing, try a bit of veganism, see if it works for them, and even that, is going to have a beneficial effect. I think I'm on Facebook a lot, and I can't remember statistics very well unless I write them down, but there was a noticeable statistic about the impact of people going vegan in terms of the climate and CO2 and so on. Yeah, and I think also, from a very human perspective, some of us actually find it quite helpful to have some guidance on how to live, or to decide about some guidance that we want to take on about how to live. So for me, that would be the 10 precepts. So when I got ordained, I take on 10 precepts which I'm going to commit to, and they're sort of training undertakings. So it's something I'm always working on, always evolving, continually changing, progressing as it were, and leaving behind things that are unhelpful, that I consider unhelpful to me and other people around me. So the 10 precepts, I'm not going to go through them. They're basically concerned with love, care, kindness, not doing harm, being really careful about how I speak, the words I use, and being committed to moving away from craving, trying to cultivate a sense of wisdom and so on. And I find that those precepts feed into every aspect of my life and give me a framework and a sense of sort of knowing where I am, something that I can go back, a bit of a touchstone in terms of how I choose to live my life. So I'm going to put ethics in there. It's something I find incredibly useful. So when I first started calling myself a Buddhist, I remember learning about these 3 things that were ethics, meditation, and wisdom. So we've got ethics there already, meditation, and then wisdom. I remember gone back to my little notebooks from years and years ago, writing down talks word for word on ethics, meditation, and wisdom, this kind of sort of holy trinity of dharma teachings. And wisdom seemed like some sort of lofty other thing for people who were older and wiser than me 20 years ago. And 20 years on, I've realised that the word still, it just doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't do anything. And language is really important to me, actually. I'm often quite keen to find the right word that really expresses something or describes something. And wisdom just doesn't do anything. It doesn't really match my experience. So actually I'm more inclined to put something like seeing or insight. That seems to work a bit better for me. Well, insight, though, can feel like a little bit of a loaded term in the Buddhist world, but the dictionary says it's the capacity to gain an accurate and deep understanding of someone or something, or its literal translation is seeing inwards. So in the past few years, I've been quite consciously working in this area of my practice. Insight in the Buddhist world means seeing into the nature of reality, seeing what's really going on. And perfect material for this is this. So I used to think that I was somebody, that there was something fixed and actual about this whole experience here. But I began to see that that was actually causing me to suffer. When I felt under attack or rejected, it was personal, and that caused me to suffer. And there were times on retreat when a teacher guided the retreatants to dismantle some assumptions about what we thought was going on and who we thought we were, that I had some flashes of insight and found afterwards that I was suffering mentally a lot less. So I was a bit like, there's something in this, kind of quite an attraction towards carrying on with that. There seemed to be some positive benefits to that. And after a particularly difficult time in my life, I resolved to put more effort into really cultivating insight in an ongoing way. And I've been very fortunate to have a lot of support in this. But actually being able to see that all there is in experience of any given moment is just thoughts and sensations has been quite revolutionary. So right now, I'm sat here, and I can feel some pressure in my body from sitting. Or I could just call it pressure. I can feel pressure. Definitely feel breathing. Whatever that is, I can feel that sensation there. There's some thoughts, mostly about thinking, it seems to be going okay. And what I can see a whole load of lovely people in front of me. And I can hear all sorts because we're at a festival, not stuck for things to hear. And that's kind of it. That's kind of it. We create so much of our world inside our own mind. So much of our experience is mind-made. And that is a reality. That is your reality when you're having that thought. That is what's happening. And that is a thought. It's not to say that's not real in that sense, because that's your reality. But actually coming back into that sort of sense of really checking back into saying, what actually is my experience here and now? So I knew that thing about, everything is just thoughts and experience, and, our reality is mind-made. I kind of knew that on paper for quite a long time. But it's actually taken me until quite recently to get a bit more of a handle on it and really see it. And that seeing makes a lot of other stuff fall away. So stories about what I thought was happening and filters through which I'm seeing things. So this has been a dismantling of the self, a fixed, permanent me. And it's been incredibly liberating and meant I suffer a lot less than I used to. So I read this article on Facebook last week attacking mindfulness, saying that it's the enemy of activism. I was like, because it encourages us to think that all the problems in the world are just in our own mind. And that if we practice mindfulness, we won't see a need to take action on inequality, injustice, and environmental catastrophe. And I kind of screamed inwardly. No. I can understand why somebody might draw that conclusion. Again, it's back to this, isn't it? It's back to this assumption about what meditation is and isn't. That you're going to be like, oh, well, no, it's all just my mate. It's not a problem out there, it's fine. It's just, you know, I just need to just work on this and everything will be fine. It's like, So there's this kind of, I think the misunderstanding of like what that article was trying to say, it comes from, I guess, dualistic thinking if something is this, it can't be that. That if I explore the contents of my own mind, I'm not, therefore, also helping everything else around me too. But how could becoming more aware and kinder not have a direct positive impact on the world around me, you know? Interconnectedness. So, yeah, for me, the world is just my own mind, in a sense. But, you know, the only way I can experience the world is through my mind, through my perceptual situation, through my senses, through my thoughts, and how I filter and experience things that way. But there isn't actually a sort of objective world out there, some kind of something else that's happening, or some kind of fixed video camera that's actually the thing that everybody else is experiencing, if you see what I mean. You know, we're all right now having very different experiences of this now. Some of you are cold, some of you are warm, some of you are bored, some of you are engaged, some of you are a bit hungry, some of you are really full. You know, some of you are like thinking, oh, I'm so over this festival. Some of you are like, oh my God, this festival's the best thing ever. There's so many different versions of your now, right now. So yeah, as a Buddhist, I'm taught all is mind. My experience bears that out. Depending on what my mental states are, things can feel a bit great, or a bit... But to stop there and think that by understanding all is mind and taking steps to cultivate positive mental states is selfish and is the enemy of activism, then I have to disagree on that. Because of interconnectedness, and because a confidence in myself that knowing that everything I do has an effect, however small. And that meditation resources me to be able to act on what is important to me in the world. So going back to my recent Dismantling Myself project, what I'm finding is that now I'm seeing how much of a fabrication any idea of a me is, I've got a lot more energy. There seemed to have been so much energy caught up in and invested in this sense of self, or me being a certain way. So I want to put wisdom, or words that are a bit better for me, insight, seeing, into the toolkit, as I feel quite confident that it can free up energy to give to a much bigger project, whatever your project is. So coming on quite quickly from that, we've got equanimity. Now then, I'm going to kind of do a thing. Like that. Just excuse me. I'm glad I did a bit of yoga this morning. Let's just pop this one in here. Right. Okay. Yeah. So equanimity, in my experience, seems to be born out of a meditation practice and also the wisdom insight practices. So it's a state when the mind is calm and unshakable in the midst of any situation, whether mundane or challenging. And, you know, we're not stuck for opportunities to test this out. So it could be like, you know, the kids at home arguing on like what they want to watch on Netflix or something. You know, or it could be, you know, the latest, you know, Donald Trump awfulness, you know, and the real awfulness. The putting on the news and learning more about these camps at the borders and just wondering about how to be with that. Being equanimous isn't a state of not caring. So it's not like a cold, distanced aloofness, detachedness. I think that's a very important point. Equanimity is about seeing all sides of a situation and empathizing with everyone involved, being able to hold the whole picture with kindness, and considering what pain or what fear Donald Trump, Nigel Farage, Tommy Robinson has too. And it's a big ask. But I think it's well worth aiming for, as it can be a formidable resource as an activist. So the work of dismantling a sense of self can be referred to as a spiritual death practice, because we're like snakes shedding a skin, or an insect emerging out of a chrysalis onto a new phase, leaving behind things that no longer serve us. And the great thing about spiritual death, if it's something that you find at all interesting, as one of my teachers, Vasantra, says, is nobody dies. So let's pop equanimity in there. The thing is, though, as an aside, I have also found the work I've been doing around insight in the last couple of years quite destabilising. This sort of self-dismantling project affects so much that you've set up to be kind of in stone, things that we think are true and actual, or a bit fixed even. And I've seen a lot of concepts crumbling. And actually one of those concepts was being a Buddhist. And that was quite unnerving. And during that time, is it going to work? Let's see if it works. No, I think something's going with my battery. I don't suppose anybody has a mobile charger with a small USB on them, do they?
Yeah, I've got a charger.
Great stuff. I think that might help. I might just have to do away with trying to be a bit high-tech little things.
Cable.
That would be lovely. Thank you very much. Ah, yeah, that one's not going to fit. It's slightly a different size. Never mind.
What phone's that? Someone might have a cable.
It's okay. Yeah, no, it's all right. We can move on. That's fine. Yeah. So during that time, I had this song ringing around my head a lot. And the song that I was going to play is the song "Losing My Religion" by R.E.M. It was quite unnerving. But actually, it's not really changed a lot in real terms. So even though I'm not entirely sure I can call myself a Buddhist anymore, because I don't actually know what that means, and that makes absolutely no sense in my experience, what I have found that actually I'm still doing the same stuff. So from the outside, it could actually still very much look like I'm a Buddhist, if that's helpful for other people. It just doesn't work for me anymore. I still seem to be doing the same stuff, as could possibly be evidenced by the talk that I'm giving. So it doesn't really matter to me anymore what I call it or don't call it. It's all cool. So now, next things that I feel quite important are teachers, friends and community, in terms of resourcing ourselves. So I'm going to put this under here. Okay, should have really gone a bit more onto the yoga this morning. Okay. Really crucial elements in our well-being, our robustness, our ability to progress and learn and change. We just can't operate in isolation. It's so much better to align yourself with the truth of interconnectedness and work with it. We are always going to need teachers, people further along than we are to guide us. Apart from anybody here who's enlightened, because after that apparently you don't need teachers anymore, but for the rest of us, anyone hoping to evolve as a human, we need to make sure that we are always open to being taught. and that you invite that into your life. And our teachers might not always necessarily be human either, so that sense of openness and receptivity to being taught is really important. Friendship and community seem to be very human needs. Friends can love us, challenge us, and support us to grow and change. They can reflect us back to ourselves and give us many opportunities to practice generosity, patience, and fun. And with some of our friendships, we might be walking the same path and choosing similar practices to support our change and development, so there can be a sharing and a mutual endeavour too. So those mutual endeavours could be what we call a community. This could be a spiritual community, sangha, or it could be a project group or team, a non-profit or activist group. Wider groupings of people who are friends and co-workers who are working on mutual projects. Having these tribes and groups brings meaningful connection and purpose to our lives. And when a community is nurtured and resourced, it can really achieve its aims. So one can mistakenly assume, as I said earlier, that this whole work of evolving and dying and practice and so on is an individual project. A bit like that wrong assumption about mindfulness practice that I referred to before. But again, coming back to interconnectedness, I just don't see how it can be. So all the tools that I'm recommending here also work on a collective level. Activist burnout gets talked out a fair bit in activist circles, and I know people who've had it. It's painful to have put so much energy into something that you care passionately about, but then to hit a wall and have to pull out. I was fortunate enough this year in spring to be invited to co-facilitate on a course out at ULEX. ULEX is one of the projects of Dharma, which is a retreat centre in Spain, in the Spanish Pyrenees. And the course was on regenerative activism. And amongst many other things, it was a very full schedule, very rich, but we looked at the importance of self-care. I forgot to put that one in, pop that one in. So this is the next one. Self-care is a term that gets used a lot on social media. If you spend half as much time as I do on social media, a lot of references there, I think you're probably getting a bit of an idea about me. I have no shame about being a Facebook user. Let me just say that right now. Yeah, so it refers to various ways of looking after ourselves. So it could be just something like taking a duvet day, or what we call taking a mental health day off work, taking a duvet day. Could be going and booking a massage. It could be something like, taking some time to review your work-life balance. And I'm going to put it in the toolkit because even though the foundations for it could well be based in mindfulness and compassion-based practices, with a good understanding of interconnectedness thrown in, I do think it's got an importance as a standalone practice. So let's have a look. So self-care. Let's somehow pop it here, maybe. So he's definitely affected by that and this. Probably some of that as well. Probably also some of this, right? This is where I get quite excited. And I remind myself, because it's all got quite exciting now, and look how all joined up it is. This might be lost on a lot of people because of the whole internet thing, but I do remind myself of this meme. I don't know if this means anything to anybody. Thank you. But now I'm feeling a bit like that. So there we go. Let's pop him under there. It's actually from a film. I didn't realise that. But yes, I'm feeling a bit like that guy now. Yeah, so I think self-care can be considered also as a standalone practice, even though it obviously comes out of all of those things. An essential aspect of self-care is rest and relaxation. Being able to take rest seriously as a critical part of how we function is essential to any kind of ongoing activity. You have to know when to stop. And you also You need to be able to learn to let yourself relax if you aren't already quite good at that. Again, going back to the beginning when I talked about, started talking about meditation, and that it can feel counterintuitive to sit still when there's so much to do. It's a bit like that. Because we aren't equipped with infinite resources, infinite energy. We're just human animals, and we need to rest and relax too. Sticking again with the whole linking it to meditation as well, it's a really good idea to approach your sitting practice or your meditation practice, however you do that, lying down or walking, from the perspective of rest and relaxation. It's all too easy for us to treat meditation as another thing to do. You know, tick it off, I'm just going to do my meditation, and I'm meditating. Kind of sort of charge at it. Well, that's what I have done a lot in the past for quite a long time. So I'm very much speaking from my own experience here. But I actually now would very much recommend treating your time meditating as a time of rest. I mean, sure, yeah, you're meditating, you're probably doing something, maybe bringing focus to something or intention to something in that. But coming at it as a time of rest, doing it in a restful way, allowing yourself to really sit back into your posture, into the present moment, as much as you feel able to. There was a little cartoon on Facebook saying that sometimes this kind of importance of being informed, somebody was saying, I really, really want to know what's going on, but I also really, really need to sort of take care of myself and not know what's going on, sort of feeling that sort of conflict between the importance of being informed and the importance of looking after yourself, if that means sort of not taking in too much. There's just so much information out there that we have access to now if we want to. And our little brain-body system thing can get a little bit overloaded if we're not careful. I mean, I even find here at the festival, I do get sensory overload. It's just a human thing. It just happens, you know. And it's going to happen when there's a lot going on. My feed is full of climate-related news, you know, and some of it does use language meant to shock. It's, you know, it's wanting to catch our attention, and that's fair enough. But how do you guard against overwhelm or horrified anxiety? So there was something else that I find quite useful here. This is just bringing in a teaching from someone else. I'm just going to take a bit of time to stand up. There we go. And you might be familiar with this already. I thought it was just worth sharing. I find quite a useful little tool in all of this self-care business is this. So it's the it's something created by Stephen Covey. It's been around for a long time. You may well know it. As far as when he defined it, it was called the circle of influence and the circle of concern. But I learnt it like this, and it sort of stuck, so I stick with this. So this is a super important bit of applied self-care right here. Because we care a lot about all sorts of things. There's all sorts of things in my mind right now that I'm very, very concerned about. And I'm going to use the example of people seeking asylum into the United States, people seeking refuge into the United States of America from countries to the south of the USA at the moment, because it feels like a good example and it works for this. So I very much care about that. That is in my sphere of concern. I find it very hard to hear some of the news concerned with that situation right now. But it's something I've got very little influence over. I live a long way away. I don't have the chance to try and vote somebody else in. I don't have the chance with my lifestyle to be able to go over there and protest there. I can't put myself in that situation. I can't be an activist there front line. There are some things I might be able to do, which would be letter writing or telephone calls and so on, if I wanted to. But I've got very, very little influence over there, but I care about it a whole lot. Then there are things that I really, really care about that are very much in my sphere of influence. So Sarah said that we work in Buddhafield, and I think for me I find it incredibly rewarding that if there are things that I really care about here within Buddhafield and what we do through the year, I've actually got a lot of influence in that. I've got a say. You know, I'm in meetings and I'll say, well, actually, I think this, or could we suggest that, or could we talk about this? It's not to say it's going to happen, yeah, but I have some influence. I have the capacity, and then that feels very, very meaningful. So we need to be able to find this sort of balance between knowing what we can have an impact on, knowing what we do have an impact on, and knowing what we can't, and being able to hold all of that. It's quite useful. So yeah, it gives me a reality check at times, and helps me understand that what I can and can't do as just one human being, or what I can and can't do in a collective group as well. So I'm not even going to bother trying to play my phone anymore because I know that's not working. But I was raised on a very good, healthy diet of Bob Dylan. And so the lyrics that come up a lot, it's from Buckets of Rain. It's all you can do is do what you can. You do what you must do, and you do it well. Which is quite a nice little slogan, mind training slogan, thanks to the great Bob, the mighty Bob. So activist burnout can be prevented by really taking care of ourselves and having collective self-care written into our group's objectives. I think that's really, really important. So if you work in any sort of collective group situation, actually being very conscious about what part self-care plays in how you organise and how you operate. That's something that came up really strongly in this course out at ULEX, something that we were really focusing on a lot, because we get too much into the individual. We need to also keep it in the collective as well. Yeah. So yes, it's not to say that we can't bring about change. This is not to say, look, like, don't bother. It's about saying, yeah, you can, but also we might never be able to do as much as we would really like, and that might also be how it is. So, that's a lot of tools. I'm going to pop this one in, self-care, rest, relaxation. Yeah, so let's just go back and check through what we've covered. Here we go. Here they all are, in order. In case that is no longer making any sense to you. We've covered meditation, truth of interconnectedness, having an ethical framework, wisdom insight practices, cultivating equanimity, having teachers, friends and community around us, and the importance of self-care, rest and relaxation. So that's a lot of tools. If I was asked to just pick one thing and keep it simple, 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 the one that I would pick comes under this, but actually if I was just going to do one thing in a kind of desert island discs thing, you know, that at the end of the desert island discs, and they say you just have to pick one thing. So it would be the metta bhavana. If you're just going to do one thing, then having a cultivation of loving kindness meditation is the one that I would go with. So this practice supports us to love ourselves dearly, and for that love to be felt equally for all people. People who are close to us, people we like, and to people we don't really know, and to those we actively dislike and have problems with. It helps us to unroot difference, disconnection, and isolation faced with issues that concern us all greatly. Climate breakdown, political upheaval, mistreatment of marginalised people. This one tool can be a great resource. And if this is a practice that you're not familiar with and you're interested, then you could go to the Wild Mind website. That's Wild Mind, and the practice is taught there, and you can listen to it being taught there. So I'm going to wrap up here. I want to really thank you all for listening. I really enjoyed your company. And I really want to say thank you to my signers. Before I finish, I'm going to do one thing. I'd like to read in full the Shambala Warrior Mind Training verses by Akapa. So this is a long read, okay? So if you're feeling a bit weary and tired and you've not been moving or whatever, just get yourself into a position where you feel relaxed and just relax into it, because it's a long read. And then when I've finished, that will be the talk over. the Shambala Warrior Mind Training by Akapa. Firmly establish your intention to live your life for the healing of the world. Be conscious of it. Honour it. Nurture it every day. Be fully present in our time. Find the courage to breathe in the suffering of the world. Allow peace and healing to breathe out through you in return. Do not meet power on its own terms. See through to its real nature, mind and heart made. Lead your response from that level. Simplify. Clear away the dead wood in your life. Look for the heart wood and give it the first call on your time, the best of your energy. Put down the leaden burden of saving the world alone. Join with others of like mind. Align yourself with the forces of resolution. Hold in a single vision, in the same thought, the transformation of yourself and the transformation of the world. Live your life around that edge, always keeping it in sight. As a bird flies on two wings, balance outer activity with inner sustenance. Following your heart, realize your gifts. Cultivate them with diligence to offer knowledge and skill to the world. Train in non-violence of body, speech and mind. With great patience to yourself, learn to make beautiful each action, word and thought. In the crucible of meditation, bring forth day by day into your own heart the treasury of compassion, wisdom and courage for which the world longs. Sit with hatred until you feel the fear beneath it. Sit with fear until you feel the compassion beneath that. Do not set your heart on particular results. Enjoy positive action for its own sake and rest confident that it will bear fruit. When you see violence, greed and narrow-mindedness in the fullness of its power, walk straight into the heart of it, remaining open to the sky and in touch with the earth. Staying open, staying grounded, remember that you are the inheritor of the strengths of thousands of generations of life. Staying open, staying grounded, recall that the thankful prayers of future generations are silently with you. Staying open, staying grounded, be confident in the magic and power that arise when people come together in a great cause. Staying open, staying grounded, know that the deep forces of nature will emerge to the aid of those who defend the earth. Staying open, staying grounded, have faith that the higher forces of wisdom and compassion will manifest through our actions for the healing of the world. When you see weapons of hate, disarm them with love. When you see armies of greed, meet them in the spirit of sharing. When you see fortresses of narrow-mindedness, breach them with truth. When you find yourself enshrouded in dark clouds of dread, dispel them with fearlessness. When forces of power seek to isolate us from each other, reach out with joy. In it all, and through it all, holding to your intention, let go into the music of life. Dance.